Well, I want to warn you now, some of what we're about to discuss might be distressing. Since the terror attacks on October 7, Hamas, bizarrely, is winning not the actual war in Gaza, but the social media war in the West. Bizarre because Hamas kidnapped babies, children, teenagers, mothers and the elderly. It raped women, burnt and beheaded children, executed entire families while joyfully celebrating and yelling Allahu Akbar. Yet the terror group has found sympathisers among the woke left who claim to stand for everything the Hamas group opposes: equality, women's rights, peace and diversity. Privileged white mummy bloggers and so-called feminists who usually believe all women and would have been at the front of Me Too marches are protesting not Hamas but Israel, and not just Israel but Jews who support Israel, with these mummy bloggers sharing deeply offensive and disturbing content online. Their followers run to the hundreds of thousands, and minute by minute they risk radicalising a young generation of women and turning them against Israel. It's a deeply dangerous trend, and the social media companies, despite dozens of complaints, are doing nothing to stop what I see as blatant racism. Here are some of the worst offenders. Now, I don't follow these women on social media. You can see Clementine Ford, Abby Chatfield, Lauren Dubois, and Constance Hall. And if you're watching my program, the chances are you don't follow them either. But their followings are large, particularly among young women. Clementine Ford is a left-wing writer who wrote in one post that she wishes anyone who supports Israel is haunted for the rest of their lives. She wrote, and to any Zionist or Israel cheerleader still fixated on our propaganda BS, that this is somehow justified. I hope that every waking moment of your life has you haunted with the sound of children screaming. I hope you see their faces in your dreams. I hope you never get a single moment's peace ever again. That's Clementine Ford. She's spewing hatred on social media to her 250,000 followers. In another post she wrote, and this one goes out to all the Zionist women who are furious that their bloodlust isn't being supported. I don't care, babes. I don't care that you felt betrayed or let down, and I especially don't care now that you want to have a big crybaby rant in your reels and stories. You're pathetic, you disgust me, and I pity you for being so effing basic and gross that you think others should cheer on the murder of thousands just to make you feel better. She claims she's a feminist. That's Clementine Ford, calling for women who support the existence of Israel, which is most Jewish women, pathetic and disgusting and gross. If you said a Muslim person or an Indigenous person was disgusting and pathetic and gross, well, clearly that would be racist. And so it is racist against Jewish women who support Israel. She's also in that post accusing Jewish women of bloodlust when actually no one asked for this terror attack on October 7. In a post on October the 26th, just a few weeks after those attacks, Clementine Ford claimed that Israel had been testing illegal weaponry on Palestinians, and doctors were reporting injuries they'd never seen before, like children having their flesh melted away. I mean, it's just nutty. Quillette founder Claire Lehman said it well when she wrote on Twitter that Clementine Ford has spent 2 decades monetizing her personal hatred of men. Having exhausted that niche, she's now flogging hatred of Jewish women. Now, a high-profile member of the Jewish community who would rather his name not be made public, well, he sent a letter to Allen and Unwin expressing his dismay at their ongoing partnership with Clementine Ford. He wrote, as a left-wing Jew who fiercely supports Palestinian statehood and freedom, I'm of the clear opinion that empty, nuance-free, self-righteous polemic such as Ford's does nothing other than increase divisiveness in society at a time when Jews and Muslims should be joining forces together to eradicate right-wing extremism of all kinds. He wrote, this can never be possible when someone like Ford, who appears only recently to have declared herself a Middle East expert, accuses Ashkenazim Jews of themselves being European, another terribly offensive and frankly sophomoric trope that denies science, ancestry, trauma and history. He wrote, like Islamophobia, anti-Semitism is never acceptable, and by continuing to promote her work, you are choosing to be complicit in the continued degradation of the most reviled minority group in history, of which I am a proud progressive member. Now, that senior left-wing member of the Jewish community urges Allen and Unwin to reconsider its partnership with Clementine Ford. No word yet from the publishing house on whether it even condemns the hatred that she's spreading. Then there's Constance Hall. Now, I'd never heard of this woman before preparing and researching this report. If I could rewind to last week so I still hadn't heard of her, that'd be great. She's a Perth mummy blogger, 387,000 followers. I don't know why. I don't know who'd follow her. In this video she's posted to Instagram, she actually compares the Israeli hostages to dogs. Have a look.
Time for a little bath. Really? My bath. I just ran it for myself. It was promised to me. By who? I am the chosen one. Mum, he's holding my dog's hostage. He's 5. Have you seen the posters in his bedroom? I'm not killing my brother. I am saving my dog. Boy. Oh my God, look at the dogs. They're happy as has Stockholm syndrome. Okay, tell them how badly you've been treated.
That video went on for a long time. It is extremely anti-Semitic to compare hostages to dogs. It's kind of distressing to see so many people like that sort of content. She also posted on Instagram that somewhere in Gaza there's a little girl hiding from the IDF documenting her life in a journal. I wonder what Anne Frank would be thinking as she looks down at this tragically ironic state of affairs. Now, I don't need to explain to all of you watching this how deeply offensive that comparison is. Then there's another mummy blogger, Lauren Dubois. Just this week, she's exploited the old anti-Semitic trope about Jews controlling the government through money. Look at this.
I think Australians have a right to know whose money is making these decisions for our country, who is so powerful and so wealthy that they can influence political decisions. So I followed the money. I investigated a few of the pro-Israel lobby groups in Australia and I found a name linked to all of them, and that name is Frank Lowy. Now, he is not just an incredibly wealthy man, he's also everywhere. For a long time, he was on the board of directors for the Reserve Bank of Australia. He also founded and funded the Lowy Institute, named after himself, an incredibly prominent independent think tank which wields a huge amount of influence and power over government policy. What's even more dodgy is that Frank Lowy became an Israeli citizen in 2018. So I'm not saying that he pays the government to do what he wants, but I am saying he pays the government and the government does what he wants. Is it a coincidence?
Oh my God. Frank Lowy is a great Australian who's contributed enormously to our country. The notion of Jews controlling the government is utterly absurd and anti-Semitic. Then there's Abby Chatfield. Again, I'd never heard of her. Apparently she was on the Bachelor television show. I only watch Sky News. She's nearly 500,000 followers and has proudly boasted that the views of Zionists aren't welcome on her podcast. Abby Chatfield said also in a comment, I have said I am biased. I acknowledge that. I will not platform a Zionist. Now, Jewish groups have pointed out that around 90% of Jews support Israel. This means that she's effectively banning Jews from her podcast. Now, being a Zionist doesn't mean you agree with everything the Israeli government does. It means you support the existence of Israel, the right for Israel to exist. So this is clear discrimination against Jews. There are calls for her podcast to be removed for spreading misinformation that harms the Jewish community. These women will no doubt all say that they're not anti-Semitic. They do say that they're purely anti-Zionist. But apart from the fact that this is attacking the majority of Jews, former ABC host Josh Zepps points out that actually It's not up to these people to decide what is and isn't anti-Semitic. He asks, why are Jews the only minority group that aren't allowed to make the distinction about what's offensive to them?
Is that the rule that you want to apply to all minority claims of prejudice and indignity? Do you want to say that the person of colour doesn't have the right to say that they found something racist? I was just joking, mate. You can't take a joke. Listen to my words. You're making this up. I didn't say that. This is on you. And if that's not going to become a general rule, then why is it that this one minority obeys different rules than every other minority? This sounds a bit off. The way you're using the term Zionism, the way that we're all talking about Zionism at the moment.
Now, one thing that many of these influencers have in common, particularly Clementine Ford, is that they pick on other women. They screenshot their private complaint messages and post it publicly to their hundreds of thousands of followers and spark a pile-on. In one case, a woman had to go to the police station after Clementine Ford published threats against her. The woman said she was receiving hundreds of horrific messages from followers. Now, these 4 women that I've just shown you and others like them are not feminists when they're not outraged by the rape of young women on October 7. They're not feminists when they encourage pile-ons of other women on social media. Now, the Australian's columnist Paul Kelly, who was on this program earlier in the week, wrote in his column on the weekend that the left is making a fatal moral mistake in embracing the Palestinian cause without question when it can't disentangle that cause from the violence intrinsic to the identity and meaning of Hamas as seen in its assault of October 7. And he quoted the New York University journalism professor Susie Linfield, who said that the left is fixated on decolonisation and it mistakes a death cult for a liberation movement and is unable to recognise a bloodbath, even one that was filmed and publicised worldwide by the killers themselves. Never has this confusion become more apparent than on social media, where white leftist female commentators, mummy bloggers, have found themselves aligned with Hamas. Their online commentary is clearly racist, but they're allowed to continue to post unfettered, while accounts that promote Jewish content and the Jewish story and aren't offensive at all, like the young Ramona Chaprot's account, Did You Know? She was on this program. Well, she's now been permanently banned by TikTok. Now, I haven't wanted to waste my time with these uninformed, unintelligent, inconsequential people who mean so little to us. But the reality is they're spreading vile hatred online and they're encouraging their huge number of followers to despise Jews who support Israel. Instagram has failed to take any action despite many complaints. It's unacceptable that Instagram allows these people to spread their hatred on its platform, a company owned by Mark Zuckerberg. This is clearly creating even more division in our society, and it risks inciting attacks or bullying or hostile treatment of our young Jewish children.